A report by Americans for Tax Fairness released shortly before the election found that just 465 American billionaires had spent the better part of $1 billion, 881 million. That was just by the end of September. By the time the election was actually done and all this stuff after it, it could have been well over $1 billion. That is 465 people. You could put that in a big room, a ballroom perhaps, and they spent enough to sway countless elections. And sway they did. You'll be shocked to find this out, but an Open Secrets analysis done shortly after the election found that 96% of the House races that had been called at that point were won by the candidate who spent the most money. And by the way, the thing that was being requested was a dark money ban in primary elections. It wasn't even as all-encompassing as perhaps we might call for. It was just specifically, can we not have these billionaires and mega corporations and lobbyists and maybe other countries, God only knows, choosing who the Democratic Party's candidates are. One would think you'd want to have control over your own party, but they decline to do that because they want the wealthy to be able to choose who they have.
Yeah, so first of all, why are those 465 people spending so much money on politics? They must really care about the general welfare. They want to be so charitable to the rest of us. I'm sure they didn't ask for tax cuts where they would wind up getting a lot more money back than the one that they put into politics.
Hold on, Cenk, I apologize for interrupting you. I don't want to Don Lemon you. Can you imagine just asking a reporter, why do you, like question you just asked, why do you think they spent the better part of $1 billion?
Yeah.
I would love to see them try to explain it.
Yeah, like by the way, when I ran for Congress, I asked it all the time, and not a single reporter would ever print it. I would ask the politicians that were in the running in the race. I would ask the reporters. They never, under penalty of law, they were not going to print that question. Why do you think they're spending the money? Do you think it's for the general welfare? Do you think it's for charity? I mean, some of the corporations that spend money are, so there you got the individuals, then you got the companies. ExxonMobil, do you think ExxonMobil is doing it for the general welfare? Because they weren't feeling charitable that day. Only a lunatic would think that. I mean, literally, if you said, yes, I think ExxonMobil is doing it for charity because they love the American people so much, I would get you under clinical observation, right? And yet, that is the assumption that they write into every effing story. It's a mental, and I'm gonna tell you why in a second. But so once you get past those 400 some odd people, then you've got the dark money super PACs. They spent 1.35 billion in this last midterm election. It's not even presidential, midterm, okay? That's well over $1 billion, but that's just a part of it, right? When you put in all the super PACs, all the different outside forces and the individuals, all of it together, in the last midterms, there was $17 billion in the election, spent on the election. 17 billion, okay? So, why doesn't the media talk about the overwhelming, most obvious factor in politics? And guys, I say this all the time too. To be fair to the politicians, if like Sheldon Adelson, for example, 3 different times gave over $100 million to the Republicans. If someone gave you $100 million, would you do what they said? Probably, right? I'd be tempted to do it, right? I've turned down a lot of money in the past, and $100 million, that's a lot, right?
I've done a lot worse for a lot less.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody gave you $10,000, you'd be tempted to do it, right? Okay, so of course the politicians are just working for these donors. But the reason why the press doesn't talk about something so obvious is because almost that entire 17 billion goes to the press. It goes directly into advertising. Advertising in media, and most of all, in newspapers and television.
Yep.
And guess who never, ever, ever, ever criticizes money in politics? Newspapers and television. They've got 17 billion reasons not to. So mainstream media, including the New York Times, including CNN, and all these things that are beloved by establishment Democrats, are at the heart of corruption. They purposely avoid the largest topic in politics. Now, turn to the Democrats in this particular vote. So I used to think, look, you gotta introduce bills first. You gotta somehow bills, amendments, you gotta get money out of politics. I don't know that you should do unilateral disarmament before you've actually passed any bills prohibiting the other side from doing it as well. I no longer think that. Why? Because now it's gotten so comical that the dark money that the DNC wouldn't even vote on and is accepting is coming, a lot of it is coming from Republican donors. Why are Republican donors giving to the Democratic National Committee? Because they're saying you must use that against progressives in primaries. So the dark money now is used not to fight Republicans. It's coming from Republicans into the Democratic Party to fight progressives. So in that scenario, oh hell no. Of course I don't want him taking dark money. And that's exactly why they wouldn't even vote on it, because they're so deeply corrupt. Yeah. I'll get to the reaction from Bernie Sanders and others in a second, but Max.
So the ridiculous thing here is, in the same breath, the DNC then asks, why is there an enthusiasm gap on the left for Democratic candidates? And maybe it might have something to do with the fact that they stand up and say, we have to stop the corrosive influence of money in politics, and then throw open the doors for any billionaire who's bored to funnel money in. And what ends up happening is exactly what we've seen. They use that money to drown grassroots progressive candidates. They pick whichever establishment Democrat is cloned out of the DNC candidate program, and then that establishment corporate Dem loses a winnable race. These people expect us to believe that they're going to pass campaign finance reform in Congress. We can't even get campaign finance reform in the Democratic Party. So it's no surprise to me that the left is furious about this, and it's the only shame is no one at the DNC is listening.
Yeah. So, by the way, you might be wondering, why are Republicans giving Democratic incumbents? That seems, even to run against progressives in primaries, but still they're Democrats, right? Well, that's the point. Republican donors have made the calculation that mainstream Democrats are identical to Republicans. That they have the same exact economic policies. They can blah, blah, blah about race and religion and all the culture war stuff, but at the end of the day, they're now convinced that the Democratic Party will do whatever Republican donors tell them to do. By the way, one of those Republican donors that gave to dark money to the Democrats was Sam Bankman-Fried. Yep. The guy who did the scam at FTX, right, and got caught. He pretended to be a Democratic donor. Later when he got caught, he admitted, no, he gave money to the Republicans and gave to the Democrats as PR and to destroy progressives. He didn't say destroy progressives, he said for PR, and of course implicit was to make sure that neither one of these corrupt clowns, clown parties, regulate me, okay? And if his whole thing hadn't crashed, no, the Democrats would have never regulated him. And neither would the Republicans. They let criminals like that run around all the time until they lose everybody's money, okay? And then lastly, what I promised you guys, Bernie Sanders with a strongly worded tweet against the DNC. I want you to blah, 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 blah. Didn't name anyone, blah, 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 blah. It floated into the sky. It was useless, totally useless. Has Bernie ever championed forcefully a bill or an amendment, which is what you really need to get money out of politics? No. Has Elizabeth Warren, remember her on the campaign trail? Oh, she was, that's why I loved it. Corruption, legalized bribery, she used those words. She goes back into the Senate after she ran for president. Never said it, not gone. Never talked about it again. Wait, you mentioned it 1,000 times when you were trying to win our vote. And then all of a sudden you stop running for president and you don't give a damn anymore? You know what that tells me? That tells me you're a fraud. But look, my own Just Democrats that I helped start, AOC and the rest of them, have they championed a single bill or a single amendment to get money out of politics? Nothing. So they don't get it. They're not bad people. AOC, Bernie Sanders has said they're not at all bad people. They're wonderful people. I don't know, maybe they're just a little slow. Do you not get it? The real issue is money in politics. By the way, if I ask you, you say, yeah, the real issue, Cenk, is money in politics. Then how come you never do anything against it? And I'll tell you, I'll give you the answer. Here's the secret. Because it would offend their effing colleagues. Oh, you don't want to hurt their feelings. You guys have to get along so well. Bernie's friends with Biden and all of these new Justice Democrats are now great friends with a lot of their Democratic colleagues. And they're in caucuses together and they have tea and crumpets together. You wouldn't want to offend them. I got news for you. They're corrupt, and you're never gonna say it because you care more about yourself than you do about the voters. I'm being honest, and if that hurts your feelings, that's kind of on you and not on me.